Section 7.2 rational, which means fractional, exponents, which means powers. So rational exponents means fractional powers. So turns out you can write any radical in exponent form. All you have to do is take the power of the radicand and divide it by the index. So nth root of x to the m, that's how you read this, is exactly identical to x to the power of m divided by n. Remember, sometimes that m, the power of x, might appear on top of the what? Outside of the parentheses, but this is still in exponent form is m over n. So this is exponent form. This is corresponding equivalent to this form in radical. So if I have a square root of 25, remember, there is a 2 here you don't see, there is a 1 here you don't see. So a square root of 25 is like 25 divided by what? To the power of 1 over 2. The power of the radicand divided by index. So the denominator is always the index. Yes? You know, the number which is inside the V shape. Cube root of -8. Remember, negative has an invisible power of 1. So that would be -8 to the power of 1 divided by 3. Remember, the denominator is always the index. How do you read this? You read this as 5th root of x to the 4. But exponent form of this radical is x, but to the power of 4 divided by 5. What about this guy? How do you read this? You read this as 4th root of x plus 2 cubed. But how does that look like in exponent form? Well, that's x plus 2 quantity to the power of 3 over 4. Once again, the denominator of your power, which is always a fraction because we're dealing with what? Fractional exponents, has to be the index. So anytime the power is a fraction, so that should remind you of a radical. -4x squared y to the 5th to the power of 1. That's -4x squared y to the 5th to the power of 1 over 7. So let's do some conversions. Let's say we have cube root of y. They want you change the following into exponential form. So the power here is 1, so the answer is y to the power of 1/3. 5th root of b cubed is b to the power of 3/5. xy, cube root of xy doesn't have a power, so this should be xy to the power of 1/3. This guy doesn't have a power, give a power of 1, so that's 3x plus 5 to the power of 1 over 6. Incidentally, you would read this as 6 root of 3x plus 5. What about this guy? Well, first you write what's under the radical, like this guy here. Okay. And then you know there is an invisible 1 here, so that's the whole shebang gets to be raised to the power of 1 over 8. Remember I told you sometimes the power of the radicand appears on top. In other words, this is exactly the same as 4th root of b minus 7 cubed. So you would write that as b minus 7 to the power of 3 over 4. Don't forget the denominator is always the index. We could also do this the other way around. What does that mean? Now, how about if I give you what? rational powers, and you change these guys to radical form, right? Remember the denominator was index, so it has to go and sit right here. And that guy is the power of the what? Y. There it is. So the answer is cube root of y. What about this guy? Remember the denominator is your index. So that reads 17x, what? Square root of 17x. What about negative exponent? Well, negative exponent is a bit tricky because first you have to convert that to positive exponent before you change it to a radical form. How do you change a negative exponent to a positive exponent? You just flip this fraction. So you write this as 1 over 23y. But now that you have a positive exponent, so remember this guy is your index. So the answer is 1 over 23y to the first power, which is cube root of 1 over 23y. So if you have a negative exponent, first you gotta what? Flip this. This guy has a name, is called a base. So you gotta flip the base first and then proceed. How about this guy? Well, that would be like, remember, this is your index. So that's 5x plus 2y to the power of 3. What about this guy? Well, remember the denominator is the index, 11x to the power of 4. So let's do some cute problems. How do you evaluate 49 to the power of 1/2? Well, that's like, square root of 49 to the power of 1, which is the square root of 49, so the answer is 7. What about 1 over 8 to the power of 1/3? Remember, this is the index, so that's 1 over 8 to the power of 1. You know, that 1 goes and sits right here, acts like a power. This is the same as cube root of 1 over 8, which is cube root of 1 divided by cube root of 8, which is 1 over 2. What about negative 27 to the power of 2/3? That's like cube root of, remember denominator is the index, negative 27 to the power of 2. Okay, so then you would what? Take the cube root and then what? Raise, what is it? 27, what is it? To the power of what? 2. And you would get 729. Is that right? But now you take what? Cube root of that number. Well, what did I say? 729. The answer is 9. There you go. See what I did right here? Cube root of 729. Okay, one more time. You have a negative power. First, you got to change that to positive. How do you do that? How do you change a negative power to positive power? You flip the base. So 49 goes on top, 100 goes at the bottom. Now that you have a positive exponent, you are allowed to change this to radical. Remember, the denominator is the index. That's 49 over 100 to the first power, which is basically a square root of 49 over 100, which is a square root of 49 over square root of 100, which is 7 over 10, right? So now let's try to multiply and divide what? Expressions with rational exponents. So if you recall, when you multiply two exponents, different powers but same bases, you simply add up the powers. So question here is multiply x to the 4 by x to the 1 half. Well, we still have to follow this formula, no? Except now we have fractions. So this would be 4 plus 1 half, which is the same as x to the power of 4 and 1 half, which is the same as what? 9 halves. Do not change that to decimal or improper fraction, none of that. So this is the final answer. So x to the 4 times x to the 1 half is the same as x to the 9 over 2. Next, we are asked to multiply 2x to the negative 1 half by these two terms. So I need to use distribution law to remove the parentheses. So what do I get? 2 times 3 is 6, x to the power of negative 1 half plus 4. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, x to the power of negative 1 half plus 1 half. Now I gotta do this. Well, negative 1 half plus 4. You and I, we both know LCD is what? Is 2. So this guy is negative 1, and this guy is 8. So now that I got same denominators, so now I can, what? Perform the fraction. And what do I get? 7 halves. Do you see it? So this would be 6 times x to the power of 7 halves minus 2x to the power of 0. But remember, x to power of 0 is 1. Why is that true? Well, remember when you divide exponents, you're supposed to subtract the powers, correct? Suppose I'm dividing x to the 6 by x to the 6. So if I follow this what? A rule, that will be x to the 6 minus 6, which is x to the 0. But any number divided by itself is 1. So that confirms the fact x to the 0 is 1. So this guy is 1. So the answer is 6x to the 7 halves minus 2 times 1. So the answer is 6x to the 7 halves minus 2. Final answer. Do you see it? How about this guy? How about if we are asked to divide expressions with rational exponents? Well, remember, you're supposed to subtract the powers. So the question is, which power should I subtract from which? Well, you always subtract the smaller one from the larger one, right? So in this case, I would imagine you would go 1 half minus 1/3 all over 1. So now I need the LCD here, 1 half, 1/3. LCD is 6, isn't it? So that's 3, and that's 2, that's 1 over 6. So the answer is x to the power of 1 over 6. There is no need to show the 1 at the bottom of the fraction. What about these guys? Well, 7 goes into 14 twice, 7 goes into 35, what, 5 times. And now we have to do something about the x's, all right? So I'm going to go, what, 2, and then I'm going to hold on to the 5, but then I'm going to go x to the power of, say, what, negative 3, 4 minus 3. So I'm going to minus 3, I should say. Sorry about that. So let me just erase this quickly and say, aha, we're supposed to subtract, so that would be negative, what, 3 over 4 minus 3. Remember, you're supposed to subtract, but this guy is negative, so it's minus 3. So what do we get? 2x to the power of negative 3/4 plus 3, all divided by 5. Okay, so I need to do a bit of a calculation on the side here. LCD is 4. Is that right? So that's negative 3. Here is what? 12. So 12 minus 3 over 4, which is 9 over 4. So how about 2x to the 9 over 4 all over 5? Keep in mind the final answer should have no negative power. So if it is negative and it's on top, place it at the bottom. And if it is negative power, the expression has negative power, your x has negative power, and it's at the bottom, place it on top. So how about simplifying this kind of mess? Okay, how do you do this? First, don't worry about this power of 2. Divide these two expressions. 3 goes into 27 9 times. X to the 1 over 4 divided by itself is 1. So it looks to me all you have is 9y cubed. Don't forget the square. But remember, this is the same as 9y cubed times 9y cubed, which is 81y to the 6. Remember, when you add or multiply exponents, you add the powers. When you divide exponents, you subtract the powers. So in this case, y to the third times y to the third is y to the what? 6. Finally, we got this guy right here. First thing I do is what? So right now it doesn't matter. Either you distribute the 2 or simplify this guy and then later raise the final answer to the power of 2. How about if we simplify? How about if we divide this guy by this? What would that be? That would be x to the power of negative 3 minus 2. Don't forget I have to raise the answer to the power of 2. Okay, did you know that's the same as x to the power of negative 1/3 plus 2? So now on the side here, let's see what's that equal to. Negative 1/3 plus 2. What is LCD, you ask? It's 3. So that guy is negative 1. That guy is kind of like 6. So that's 6 minus 1 over 3, which is 5/3. So this is x to the power of 5/3 to the power of 2. Now you have a power which has been raised to a different power. Then we use this rule, x to the power of m to the power of n. That means when you have two powers at the same time, to remove the parentheses, you multiply the powers. That's one of the rules of exponents. Here, I got to multiply 5/3 by 2 to remove the parentheses. And when you multiply 5/3 by 2, you multiply the tops, you multiply the bottoms, you get x to the power of 10/3, and that's our final answer. How do I know it's final answer? Because the power is what? Positive. And that's basically how you deal with what? Rational exponents. Thank you.